Welcome to video 42. So we've gone through a couple steps in the process of connecting to PayPal and providing payment information. We've retrieved the access token, we've provided PayPal with the information, and now in step 3, we've redirected to PayPal so the customer can pay. The last two steps, steps 4 and 5, is when the customer gets redirected back to our website, we need to confirm the payment. And that completes the process and allows us to show some sort of thank you message to the user. So let's take a look at our sample code. So that's creating payment using PayPal. And if you look down here at the bottom and look for the URL that we're sending people back to after they complete payment, we set the return URL to executepayment.php. So let's take a look at that file. And like I've done in the past, let's copy the entire file. I'm going to close this and let's paste it at the bottom of our m_payments.php, like so. So what we have is we have a check. In the case of the sample code, they were checking that a success message in the URL was in place. And if so, they were processing the payment and then displaying the results of the payment. So we're going to adjust things a little bit. We don't need this bootstrap line. I've already included that. We do need these three use lines. So I'm going to copy that and paste it up at the top. And probably the next step is going to be to create another method. So I'm going to copy this section, just give us something to work with. So we want to execute that payment. And this is steps 4 and 5. And technically, because we're also redirecting within this create payment method, this is steps 2 and 3. Okay, so we want to create a new method. We're going to call this execute payment. And in order to execute this payment, we need both the payer ID and the payment ID. So this represents the person who paid, this represents the transaction itself. And you'll see that here. So let's go ahead and grab the main chunk of this code. So from the top of the is set, just before the echo, let me paste that in place here. Okay, so we retrieve the session and we're looking for payment ID. In this case, we adjusted it slightly like that. That makes sure the payment ID stays consistent between when we sent the user off to PayPal and once they returned. So this is the payment ID. Actually, I take that back. We are going to adjust things a little bit. We don't even need this line. We're going to do that within the controller itself. So payment get, we have the payment ID. The API context is this API context. We can go ahead and delete these comments. So we have execution, new payment execution, and then instead of the get payer ID here, we're going to refer to this variable. I'll paste that in place. And then finally, we're going to do the result, payment execute, execution, and then this API context, like so. And then finally, for the last thing, return the result. So to go over that one more time, we've created a new method, execute payment. It expects the payer ID and the payment ID. representing both the customer who purchased something and the transaction itself. We're creating a new payment, or actually, excuse me, we are getting the payment information, we are executing the payment, and then the result we are returning, so we can show something out to the user. So with this in place, let me just adjust this. This is going to return a result object, and the parameters are, I believe this is both a string, so string. And then I'm going to delete everything down here at the bottom of the file and save the file. So similarly, we have a method. Now we need to hook it up on the front end. So that's going to be done within success.php. Here we go. So let's build out this file and adjust it as necessary. So we have our app init, we set the data, so that's all good. We need to create the payment object. And actually what I can do is I can copy that code directly from checkout.php. So create payment object, copy, paste. So that's going to create the payment object. Now we want to execute payment to finalize. And in order to do that, we're going to get some information. Payer ID equals. What PayPal does automatically is when it returns back to us, or when it sends us back to whatever URL we specified, it sets a specific payer ID in the URL. So we want to grab that information, but we also want to make sure it's relatively secure. So I'm going to use HTML special characters here. And we're going to get payer ID. And then similarly for payment ID, that's going to equal, and that's going to retrieve from the session payment ID. And then finally, results equals, and then we want to actually execute that payment. So payments, execute payment, we're passing in the payer ID and the payment ID. And for now, let's go ahead and actually echo out the results to the page so we can see visually what PayPal provides us back. So kind of similarly to what we did before, just for testing purposes, I'm going to echo a pre-tag, print our results, and exit. So we'll take this out later, but let's test this and make sure everything's working the way we expect it to. So let's save it. Let's take a look at our front end here. We might, oh, excuse me. I think I need to delete a line here. So in M payments, line 23, here, you'll notice we actually already have that in place. So I can take that line out. Okay, so we click the Pay with PayPal button. We have our proper information in place. If we can't log in here, we'll have to do the same thing we did earlier, which was open up a new browser, a new incognito window, and test there. Yep, looks like we'll have to do that. So let me just go ahead, let's go back, copy the URL, open up a new window. Let's add an item to the cart. So it looks like everything's good there. Let's pay with our PayPal account. So I'm going to go and log in with my personal testing account. Continue. And here we go. Here's the final results that PayPal returns to us. You'll see that we have an approved transaction, and here's sort of the just overall details of all the information that was input, including the first and last name of the person who submitted payment, their address information, and the individual transaction itself with the details, the total, and looks like an individual listing for each of the different items that was in this transaction. So this is pretty useful. I could easily see you using this information to perhaps update a database. Perhaps you have a table in the database that holds all the individual orders. You could use this information to grab that and save it to the database. For the sake of simplicity though, I think I'm going to let you handle that side of things. I'm going to comment this out. Let's go ahead and grab the user's first and last name though, so we can have some sort of personalized method, personalization of the success page for the user. So in order to do that, template set data, and we're going to set name. And in order to get the names of the people, go back here. So we have a results variable contains an object, which is an array, and then it contains the state all the way down to the first name. So in order to get this first name and last name, what we need to do is we need to access the results. We need to access all the way down to payer, payer info, and then finally first and last name. So it's going to look like this. Results, payer, payer info, first name. And again, we're using these because we're dealing with objects in each case. So then I'll add a space between the first and the last name. I'm going to do the exact same thing, but get the last name instead. Okay, so now that we have the name, that's all good. We want to clear the cart. So we empty the cart, we set total items and total cost to 0. We get category navigation, so that can be displayed within the page, and we show the public view. And then the only last thing left is we need to adjust that public view. So let's look at our views. Success. So page title is good, but let's include that person's name on the page. So PHP we're going to do this, get data. We're going to get the name, and then comma, and now finish off with "We appreciate your purchase. Have a good day." And I guess the last thing I probably would like to do, just to make it easier on the customer, whoopsie, is we're going to include a link. And we're going to link to our site path variable, the main homepage. And we'll say homepage. Okay, so that's saved. This is saved. And to kind of cover things very briefly one more time. So we start at the checkout page. We create a payment object that starts step 1 of the process, authentication with PayPal. We get data within the cart and the details, and we send it off to PayPal using payments create payment. If there's an error message, we show it. Otherwise, we're going to go ahead and be redirected to PayPal. Once we return back from PayPal, the user is going to visit success.php. We're going to create the payment object again. We're going to finalize that payment, and then we're going to grab some information from the results of that payment and display it for the user. So let's go ahead, let's open up Chrome again, and let's try this full process one more time. So we have a shopping cart, we have an item in the shopping cart, we'll pay with PayPal. And while I think of it, let's test that cancel URL. So we want to cancel and return back to my test store. We are redirected back to the cart. But if we do want to go ahead and pay, let me log in. Let me try that again. Okay, so we log in, we're going to continue. And we successfully submitted the payment. We get our thank you message. We've grabbed our name, Ben Tester, being the person who paid for this items, and we can link them back to the home page. Pretty much the last thing to mention here, now that that process is in place, is let's go back. Let's take a look at the developer portal. So developer.paypal.com, and let's take a look after we log in. Because the nice thing about using the sandbox is we get access to see all the emails and all the reports that get sent to our test users. So we have our applications, I believe it's within applications, sandbox accounts. And you can take a look at the notifications, for example, for the business. And you'll notice that we have 2 notifications of payment received successfully, so that's great. And we should also have notifications for the personal account, receipts for a payment. So all things considered, I think everything looks like it's working properly. I'm going to take a look at the code one more time just to double check. But join me in the next video for the wrap-up. Thanks.